Well, officially then, hello and everyone. Thank you for coming. So there's some key themes in this talk. Resilience, inspiration, service, and community. Community is strong here in this room, and indeed across this nation. Some of the people in this room attended high school with me 40 years ago. Others have been friends and family for more than 20 years, dear neighbors. It's family and community that support and encourage us on an epic adventure like this, so I want to thank all of you. Thank you. In the summer of 2022, I departed New York City across this vast continent to the Golden Gate Bridge, 3,669 miles. I pushed my bike up and over hills and mountains equivalent to 4 Mount Everests. Wonderful people like you donated more than $22,000 to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital on my behalf. Again, thank you.
Well done.
This cross-continent journey took 73 days of pedaling over 13 weeks, essentially the entire summer. It covered 12 states and the province of Ontario. So yes, Canada. This is that story, but let's rewind. Why did I do this? My wife and high school sweetheart, Maureen, said I should call this talk The Tortoise Who Kept Going. You see, I'm not an athlete. I've never been an athlete. The people I went to with high school in this room know that. I couldn't climb the ropes in gym class in middle school. Anyway, I joined the high school football team when I was a sophomore, and I was nominated during football camp as the hardest worker. And that would really define my football career. Hardest worker. No talent and no speed. But I had resilience. And you'll notice there's only 8 guys there. I had a high school class over 310 people. These were the remaining senior men on the team. So let's fast forward 25 years. In September of 2009, a disc in my back ruptured, and I became paralyzed from the knees down in both legs. A fall in Switzerland while hiking in the Alps likely made lifelong back problems worse, but the day it happened, I was simply sitting in my chair at home with this computer, and I reached around to pull some more cable into my lap to free the computer up, and the disc went. I wasn't supposed to get better. I should have remained in a wheelchair, impotent for life. But someone upstairs must have thought differently. I spent 3 weeks in Kessler Rehabilitation Hospital over in New Jersey, the same facility that Superman actor Christopher Reeve spent time at. In late October, I went home in a walker, transitioned to forearm crutches and very painful carbon fiber leg braces, and I taught myself to walk again over the next year, albeit with a pronounced limp, which I still have. The only picture of that time is the day I came home from the hospital to attend my son Sean's Eagle Scout project. My walker sits to the right of the table, tucked in underneath. No longer able to run or jog, and getting fatter by the minute. I took up bike riding as my exercise, and in March of 2011, bought a modest bike. Making steady progress, I shot my mouth off to my kids in 2013. If I can get better, I'm going to ride my bike to California. In September of 2015, sick of getting passed by every bicyclist on the road, I upgraded my bike and still got passed by most of them. Yet, no matter how slow I was, my bike partner Lane Ives stuck with me. Thank you, Lane. Fast forward to 2020, COVID. And like many of you, I weighed what was truly important in life. We were living in London at the time. Without saying it out loud at first, I started to train for my cross-continent trip, often doing laps around a nearly deserted Buckingham Palace. My childhood friend Allison Petro, now living in San Francisco, started a miles competition with me to spur me on. I finished with 2,300 miles that year. Allison would later join me at the end of my trip, heading up Tioga Pass into Yosemite and across the Golden Gate Bridge. Community. We moved back to the States in late 2020 as my employer was acquired. Kevin, my now 28-year-old, and the conscience of our family said, "So Dad, you ever gonna go on that bike ride?" It was time to finally keep my word. I rode 2,500 miles in 2021 and another 2,400 in the first 6 months of last year. Up and down New Jersey and Pennsylvania hills, training for the Rockies and Iowa, but more about Iowa later. In March, the bike you see sitting in front of you, a Trek Checkpoint SL5 gravel bike, a ride which I had ordered the year before. Slowly, as other parts came in, we converted the Checkpoint into a long-haul touring bike. Racks, panniers, mountain bike gearing, and the stronger tires and that leather Brooks saddle that Lane recommended. Conscious of not overloading the bike, I weighed everything that went on it. 50 pounds of gear, food, and water. I lost another 14 pounds. That fat guy got down to 200 from a high mark of 244. My wife dropped us off at the George Washington Bridge on Sunday, June 19th. We'd start from Central Park the next day. For the first 1,300 miles of my journey, I was joined by my longtime friend and former boss, Bruce Beckwar. My childhood friend, Tom Schmieder, on the left, also joined us for the first day, pedaling north out of the city on the outstanding Empire Trail. If you haven't tried it, head up to Westchester County, try it out. Switching to the Erie Canal in Albany, we pedaled west across New York State, reaching Niagara Falls, Ontario in time for Canada Day, July 1st. Somewhere in Western Ontario later in the week, I must have been bitten by a tick camping in one of the provincial parks and caught Lyme disease. We cycled across Michigan and took the ferry from Muskegon, Michigan to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I felt weaker and weaker and exhausted. There was a telltale bullseye rash on my backside. We took 4 days off at Bruce's parents' house in Racine, Wisconsin. While there, Bruce learned his father was dying of cancer. We would head out the door with that news and my continual coughing and exhaustion attacks. In a week, we reached Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and a visit with our wives. Bruce decided to end his trip and go back and make things right with his father. I was exhausted by Lyme, but Maureen convinced me to keep going, alone. The Lyme disease surrendered as I cycled across the unrelenting hills and cornfields of Iowa. A state I remembered as flat had over 14,000 feet of climb. By the time I reached Omaha, Nebraska, I knew I could do this, and I could do it alone. There were so many personal accomplishments on this journey, and climbing the Rockies was certainly one of them. But I didn't really come here today to talk about myself. The Tortoise is here to inspire you. I'm not an athlete. Athletes summit this mountain pass and 2 others like it in a single day on an annual ride called the Triple Bypass. Ask our co-host Danny Brennan about that one. He's done it. I made this single climb at 8 miles an hour. Took 4 hours of pedaling and a lot of resting in between that pedaling, so like a 10-hour day. It's about mental toughness, resilience, and grit, something you all have and can sharpen. Hey, another point of inspiration is the kindness of our fellow Americans and Canadians. Before my trip, a few people asked if I was going to bring a gun with me. It's not safe out there, they said. My journey across this wonderful land proved just the opposite. With every problem I encountered, America threw me an angel, especially when I reached the parts of it that were hot and desolate. Let's read from my journal. August 24th, day 53 of pedaling. This is my second day in the desert. A pronghorn woke me up rooting in the dirt near my tent. Spent the night camping in the ghost town of Cisco, Utah, 2,717 miles down the road. There's no drinkable water here. Uranium mining contaminated that years ago. It's 95 degrees in eastern Utah. After miles of washboard surfaces of sections of mostly abandoned US Highway 6, I switch back to Interstate 70, yes, the interstate, and meet a mother and daughter at a truck stop. They ask if they can pray over my paralyzed ankle to cure it. I suggest the miracle they seek is not a cure. Perhaps by overcoming my limp to make this journey, I inspire others. Later in the day, I stop on the side of I-70 to give a homeless man a liter and a half of water. I continue 11 miles to Green River, Utah, and discover my rear wheel is wearing out. I need a new rim, and I have a choice. Paddle back 48 miles past Cisco to Moab, Utah, or 67 miles north to the town of Price and back up into the Rockies. My wife Maureen says, I've been meeting amazing people along the way. Some of those angels I hinted at. I think there's someone in Price you're supposed to meet, she says. Day 54 starts out on a rough note. Just a mile and a half out of the campsite, on my journey to Price, the rear tire goes flat. I locate the bubbling holes in the tube by submerging it in a truck stop restroom sink. I patch all of the holes I can see. The kind register attendant refuses to take my money for a large Gatorade. She's been watching me struggle for over 2 hours trying to hitchhike between repair attempts. In Mormon fashion, she shouts encouragement as I head out. Go finish your mission. I head north on US Highway 6, hoping my tire will hold up, but it goes flat every 5 miles. I must have missed a hole. Despite the setback, I keep refilling it with my hand pump. I'm nervous about being stranded in the desert with a failing wheel, but the Tortoise pushes on. Before nightfall, I meet Boyd, a long-haul trucker. While climbing up a steep hill, he sees a car stranded, with the drive shaft of that car clearly sitting in the road behind it. As he starts to turn around, a pallet of galvanized roofing sheets spills from the trailer and onto the highway. I stop to help him reload the sheets. Afterwards, he is adamant that I go down and offer the stranded driver water. I head downhill and meet the driver and offer him water. He does not understand my English, but sees my water bottle outstretched. He waves the water off, but seeing me on a bicycle in the middle of the desert, offers me snacks. I wonder, if we were not all together in the desert, would we have treated each other with such compassion? After completing a stressful yet fulfilling 54-mile day, I spread my tent out on the side of US 6 for the night. Day 55. The people I'm supposed to meet in Price. I pack up my tent and head the final miles to Altitude Cycle in Price. I'm greeted by Mark Jesperson, the guy in the middle. He's the shop owner. I don't likely have the parts for this repair, he says. It's Friday. If we order the parts now, I can probably have you back on the road by Tuesday. But before we go down that road, I know an expert. Let me make some calls. Go get a coffee. 30 minutes later, Ed Malmgren, the guy on the right, arrives. His business card says, USA Cycling. Among a host of things he does, Ed is a mechanic for the US Olympic team. Wow. He surveys the bikes in the showroom, pulling the rear wheel off one and transplanting it onto mine. It's not an exact match, but it gets me out the door in 2 hours, not 4 days. I pedal over to the Walmart to stock up on food. I break down in tears in the parking lot, aware of the enormous help I've just gotten from Ed and Mark. I continue to Huntington, Utah, and order a steak dinner. I'm surprised that no bill comes. Yeah, and that's the actual dinner. Because you have to take a picture of your food, right? A retired couple I met on the way in have paid for my dinner, including tip. I vow to do nice things for people as well. I am not charitable enough. It's day 56. The detour northward brings me back into the Rockies. I thought I was done with the Rockies. Climbing nearly 4,300 feet over 40 miles up Huntington Canyon would be the longest continuous ascent of my coast-to-coast trip, and I'm not even supposed to be here. Hills put stress on wheels, and already there's a weird clicking coming from the new one. The day ends in an aspen grove nearly 9,000 feet above sea level. As I settle into my campsite, I try to take my mind off the new wheel noises, admiring the breathtaking views and taking in the fresh mountain air. It'll be cold tonight. Day 58, and I've already biked 58 miles. And I'm fully out of the Wasatch Range of the Rockies, and it's flat again. I'm headed out into the desert at night for another 22 miles to reduce tomorrow's biking hours in Utah's western desert. This will be the longest day of my journey, and actually the longest day of my bicycling career to date, only 81 miles. I meet the ex-mayor of Hinckley, Utah, in their only gas station. He says I'm heading out on Life magazine's loneliest road in America. He'll make sure the sheriff knows I'm out there. As I pedal into the desert, the temperatures drop, and the night sky becomes a breathtaking display of stars. I marvel at the beauty of the desert and feel grateful for the opportunity to experience it firsthand, alone. Thank you, Maureen, for pushing me on. Resilient moments like these would prove to be the most precious and unforgettable of my trip. Day 59. It's the last day of August. I rise before the sun in my tent alongside America's loneliest road to the most incredible sunrise and take some of the best photos of my trek. Today, I bike 47 miles before seeing the first tree and lay down in the gravel and take a nap under that tree. Upon leaving, I spot 1.5 liters of water in bottles sitting on the shoulder. I lean down to pick them up. They're cold and sealed. Someone left these for me. 1.5 liters of cold water. Another angel? Strange. I gave that homeless man 1.5 liters of water just the other day. I gulp them down and head for the Nevada border in the distance. Day 60. It's September, and I reached Nevada. Yeah, it's Nevada, not Nevada. Labor Day weekend is just days away. The noise from the rear wheel is loud, and there are no bike stores anywhere. I gingerly climb 2,200 feet up and over Sacramento Pass, descending the backside while trying to keep my speed under 25 miles an hour. At the bottom, I hear a clunk. 262 miles from Price, and a spoke snaps, the first of many to come. I am literally in the middle of nowhere. I hang my thumb out for 2 hours. Wick, a young man in his 20s, picks me up in his camper van. He's on his way to California to visit old college roommates. He takes me 31 miles to Ely, Nevada, where I'll get the spoke replaced the next day. I fill his van with gas. He is ecstatic. Day 61, the Sunday of Labor Day weekend. Soon after leaving Ellie on US Highway 50, the repaired wheel starts making creaking noises again. I suspect it was not designed to carry the weight of the original wheel on my bike. And all that weight, that extra weight of the water that I needed to survive in the desert, 9 liters worth, isn't helping. I start to shift the weight from the back of the bike to the black bag in the front of the bike, and that seems to quell the noise some. Day 64, 3 days later. I spent the night in a desolate valley next to a dry lake. I'm up at 4:15 a.m. and I leave at 5:30. It's a chilly 41 degrees now. My friend Bill Callahan warned me to expect record September heat today. Get inside, he writes. This morning, I have a choice I've been contemplating for several days now. Should I add 30 miles onto this day by staying on the paved road you can see over my shoulder, adding a significant climb over the mountains in the distance, or venture out into even more remote desert on a flat to downhill gravel road, saving the 30 miles and the climb? I get to the intersection and see just the third car I've seen in 12 hours, and the first this morning. It's a road department truck. A road department truck? I ask about the conditions of the shorter gravel road. He says it's in good condition to the county line. I make the decision to take the gravel road and soon catch up to a road grader in the dust cloud you see in the distance. I relax a little, but an hour later, snap, another spoke breaks. I can still ride on a broken spoke, but another will happen soon, whatever soon means. I go another mile. It's all downhill from here. 1,500 feet of descent over 19 miles. I get a faint cell signal and try to explain to my wife Maureen where I am, just in case. If the bike can make it 9 more miles, I reason I can walk the final 10 over 5 hours. I have enough water. With every revolution, the broken spoke clicks, causing a rise in anxiety with each click. But the wheel holds together the entire way. I roll into the town of Gabbs, Nevada, population 269, one of the friendliest places I've ever been. And I can't wait to go back there. And it's not much to go back to. It's the people, the community I spoke about earlier. It's 100 degrees, just like Callahan said. At the local bar R&D's, the townsfolk hear my story and arrange a 120-mile ride for me to Mike's Bikes in Tonopah, Nevada, with Ken House and his wife, who are heading there to celebrate their joint birthdays. I get to Tonopah, and Mike does not have the part. He scavenges through at least 100 old and vintage bikes in his warehouse, but cannot find what he needs. He thinks I should head another 120 miles to Bishop, California, and runs across the street to see if the local mail truck has left for the California border yet. I can ride along, he surmises. Sadly, the truck has already left. We're joined in the office by Chris Hamrick, who's come down to chat with Mike. Mike's in a flurry of calling people all over town. Anyone going to California? Chris forcefully interrupts Mike. I'll take him. They have great clam chowder in Bishop. He looks at me. If you buy me clam chowder in Bishop, I'll take you to California. Chris drives me 240 miles round trip to get my bike fixed on his day off. After the bike is fixed, and I am safely returned to Tonopah, I'd go on to reach California on my bicycle and fulfill the promise I made to my children. If I got better, I'd ride to California. I'd break another spoke in California, and I'd get deluged in a cold storm at high altitude on my way. But by then, I'd stop worrying about bike noises and weather. I'd stop worrying about where I'd stay long ago, as churches, B&Bs, campgrounds, friends, and even bars invited me to stay for free. Americans bent over backwards to help me, always wanting to do the right thing. In the end, I would write 27 separate thank you notes to America's angels, averaging 2 per state. For 3 months this summer, America made this tortoise feel like Superman. But I'm not Superman. I'm just like you. Draw on the support of those around you, your community. Sharpen your resilience by overcoming your limit. Make and check off bucket list items. Certainly, find a way to inspire and help people along the way. Thank you. Some of those people. Yes.
A lot of those pictures are great. What did you use for a camera along the way, weight-wise, and how did you?
It's all
Okay.
iPhone.